Hey, I'm Greaser with Dorman Products, here to talk to you today about our catalytic converters. Now, the catalytic converter is one of the earliest emissions control devices used on vehicles. It's a metal section of a gasoline vehicle's exhaust system with a ceramic substrate installed within it. The structural substrate, which looks a bit like honeycomb inside, converts parts of exhaust gas into less damaging chemicals. The substrate inside is coated with precious metals like platinum, palladium, and rhodium, because these elements cause or catalyze the chemical reactions of oxidation and reduction. Pollutants like carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxides, and unburnt hydrocarbons get turned into carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and water. Your customers may request a catalytic converter, or just a cat. These pieces are found in two places: under the car, in line with the exhaust stream, or attached to the exhaust manifold itself. In either case, they look the same. It's a flared metal container that's larger in diameter than the exhaust itself, usually with shielding on it to prevent thermal damage to the vehicle or flammable items under the vehicle. Many cars have multiple converters. Sometimes they're referred to as upstream or downstream for obvious reasons. The converter that's made as part of the manifold is sometimes called a pre-converter or an integrated cat. This is a more recent style of converter. The reason for moving them closer to the engine is to heat up faster. The converters don't work until they're almost 800 degrees. Now let's talk about selling these. The converter is arguably the most difficult item to sell a customer because of the multitude of reasons they're replaced. That multitude plus the high cost means they're also highly likely to be returned. So asking some questions before you sell one might save you the hassle of a return and help your customer accurately diagnose the car. Retail customers are especially susceptible to misdiagnosing bad cats, but sadly, it happens even quite a bit on the wholesale side of the counter too. So keep your thinking cap on when dealing with these calls. Before you sell a converter, there are two things you should think about that are related to the warranty of the OEM unit. Now, by federal law, the OEM must offer a warranty on this piece no shorter than 8 years or 80,000 miles. So first, ask your customer if the vehicle is within those specs. If it is, they really shouldn't be buying a converter from you. Normally in the aftermarket, the vehicles we see are well out of warranty, but due to the generous warranty period on this part, there will be times you'll save the customer the cost of a replacement. Now, the second thing to remember about that warranty is that the period is so generous because under normal conditions, these parts are exceptionally long-lived. The odds are excellent that if the converter problem has not existed for many miles and the cat is not damaged physically, something else is probably causing the driver for replacement. So let's discuss the litany of replacement drivers. Customers will replace catalytic converters for a few reasons. There are some straightforward ones. One of the most common is theft. Because of the precious metals within them, thieves often steal them by cutting them from a car. This is generally the case with undercar catalytic converters only. Other times, damage and impact can necessitate a replacement. Impact from the outside can crack or shatter the brittle ceramic substrate. And many times the collapsed substrate will partially or completely block exhaust flow. If not one of these scenarios, pinpointing a cat as a problem gets a little more difficult. Now, the vehicle itself can kill the cat by melting the substrate within. A very rich condition, which means too much fuel, can get a converter hot enough to melt it and render it inoperable. If your customer mentions the smell of rotting eggs, there's a good chance the converter has melted. Fixing the problem is critical to success. If left unrepaired, the new cat is going to die shortly in the same way the current cat expired. Even if it doesn't melt, a cat that is the victim of a very rich mixture can suffer from soot or coking from rich conditions or misfires. The cat doesn't melt, but unburned hydrocarbons cover the thin layers of precious metal, and they are no longer able to kick off the chemical process they're designed for. The opposite is true too. A vehicle that is too lean, which means not getting enough fuel, can suffer reduced efficiency. Additional NOx gases will be generated. And confusingly, to protect the converter, the ECU will often overcompensate with fueling, so a lean condition like air leak will often generate rich mixture symptoms like a meltdown. Now, possibly the most common reason for converter replacement is because of a check engine light yielding a trouble code. It's very important to make your customer aware that codes often travel in groups, and because the catalytic converter is the final emissions control item in a vehicle, downstream of every other item, additional codes almost always mean something else needs to be repaired before the converter's health and efficacy can be assessed. This means if your store offers any type of code reading service, you should be extremely hesitant to offer a converter as a first line of repair unless you can feel exhaust restriction or see a missing or obviously damaged cat. Diagnosing every possible vehicle is obviously outside the scope of this video, but for senior counter staff, we have a great video with some diag tips that almost always yield a proper diagnosis. Check them out to better educate yourself on how to assist customers who may not be facing something as daunting as an expensive catalytic converter. When you're selling an undercar catalytic converter, you'll likely have an aftermarket supplier that complements your undercar exhaust solutions. In days gone by, integrated converters were a captive dealer item, but Dorman stepped in to offer inexpensive, high-quality aftermarket replacements. Our kits are complete. They include gaskets at either end of the converter to be replaced, and we usually include mounting hardware for the downstream end right in the box, just in case the OE hardware has seen better days. We also have some nifty products you won't find at the dealer, like our OE fixed integrated converters that isolate the turbo. On some vehicles like popular General Motors cars and crossovers, the manifold and cat are sold with the turbocharger as an assembly. The turbo is a very expensive component, just like the converter, so we offer just the cat and manifold to give your customers a more affordable way to repair only what's malfunctioning. And when selling converters, you'll need to make sure that you have the correct cat identified. It's easy on single bank engines, but on multi-bank layouts like V6s, V8s, or pancake motors, you'll need to identify the correct cat. Now here's a pro tip for you. If your customer is asking for a cat by bank, like bank 1 or bank 2, odds are good that you should be asking questions. You can also help them by remembering that bank 1 on all vehicles is where cylinder 1 is, and a service manual or a quick Google search can often pinpoint which cylinder is number 1. You'll also need to remember to have the correct emission system identified and be aware of changing local laws regarding the replacement converters you sell. Many states require California compliant, which also called CARB compliant, replacement converters nowadays, even if a vehicle was not produced with California compliant emissions equipment. These laws have been changing rapidly, so be sure to keep abreast of them so you are compliant with your local and state laws. Even in states that do not have this requirement, it's important to be aware of whether the vehicle was originally equipped with California compliant systems. It's also important to note that where the vehicle was sold or registered is irrelevant. The only way to make sure is to check the vehicle's emission sticker, which is normally located under the hood. Also, be aware that the sticker may be incorrect if a body panel has been replaced. Now, once you've guided a customer through some of the pitfalls of diagnosing the converter and you are ready to sell one, you may want to inquire about the shape of the mounting hardware if it's not in the box. Cylinder head studs, for example, can break, and Dorman sells that hardware separately. Penetrating lubricant is a safe bet to suggest too. You may also ask your customer if he has an oxygen sensor socket, which is a somewhat specialized tool that is necessary for almost all catalytic converter service. In that same vein, suggesting a full complement of oxygen sensors, sometimes called lambda sensors, is a good idea since they start to degrade and read slowly as they are used. It's usually easy to explain the economy of protecting a new expensive converter with some new sensors. And in the case of many older Toyota vehicles, undercar sensors need to have their gaskets replaced, which you can get from Dorman. And if the vehicle side of the harness should be damaged, we offer some pigtails to repair those as well. And of course, if your customer has found something else is causing the issue, like a leaking intake manifold, a faulty air intake boot, or a suspicious ignition component, before replacing the cat, sell that repair first. And don't forget, Dorman has your back on those products as well. Then check codes again. All too often, the cat code disappears when the malfunctioning upstream part is replaced. One quick item before I let you go, it might save you some work. Due to the high cost of converters, you do well to open the box before you hand it to your customer and verify the item inside is new. It's not unheard of for a counterman to take a return without checking what came back from a customer. And if a used OEM item is shoved in the box and comes through your DC, you might be the one handing a converter that's not new to your customer. And similarly, if a converter should come back to you, you need to open the box and make sure the converter hasn't been installed or run. It can be hard to tell, but I normally look at the areas where the cat bolts to the cylinder head and the block. If it has been installed, you're going to see witness marks where the fasteners contacted the metal. Also be aware that due to the high cost of these, some people will attempt to return used catalytic converters, which usually look rusty or maybe even have something dense and heavy like a brick or two in the box, the chance that you won't open it. Protect your store and your honest customers from returns of use. Always open the box and check the part you're selling or returning. Hopefully you're a little more confident when selling a converter and you understand why a Dorman integrated cat is a great repair option. And remember, if you need any help before, during, or after the sale, our Dorman technical support team is always handy to help. Give them a jingle, 866-933-2911. Thanks for taking a little time to brush up on manifold converters. We hope it helps you and your customers. I'm Greaser. I'll see you soon.